Hey, Lance, Egan here with Fly Fish Food. Today we're going to show you the Chartreuse Headstand. This is a fly for smart fish, for carp, smartest fish in fresh water. This is the attractor version, very easy to see, very bright, just the right amount of weight, just the right amount of bling. The Chartreuse Headstand, check it out.
That's a big brown bro.
All right, let's get started tying the Chartreuse Headstand. This is my favorite carp fly because it's easy to see, it's easy to tie, the fish like it, generally speaking. There are always exceptions to that rule, of course. It's got just enough weight to get down. I used to call this one my royal wolf of carp flies because it imitates absolutely nothing, but the fish seem to eat it pretty well. My favorite part about it is it's so bright that I can usually see it, which is important when you're sight fishing for carp. So let's get started here. I've got UTC 140 in fluorescent chartreuse thread in the bobbin. I have Umpqua 2457 size 8 hook in the vise. Taken some bead chain eyes. These are medium size from Hairline. Just silver bead chain, which I took some cutters and trimmed a couple of them away to make a little bead chain eye that's like this. So all we're going to do is start the thread right behind the eye. Give us a little base to work with. Then we're going to tie in the eyes and just kind of figure eight them into place. Some orange dubbing in there from the last fly. Before I get too many wraps in there, I like to touch them with a bit of brush on super glue right between the eyes. There's still that dubbing in there that's driving me nuts. A little bit of orange. All right, then we're just going to wrap the thread into the super glue. Do some wraps to really lock those eyes into place. Once we've got them into place, I'm going to now reposition my hook so I can get access to the tail. Work the thread down to the bend. Next, we're going to take some rabbit. This happens to me to be Magnum. It doesn't need to be Magnum. Any rabbit strips in zonker cut, cross cut, it doesn't really matter. We're going to cut it away from the skin anyway. So all we're going to do is take some of the rabbit here. I just happen to grab this one because it's the dialot I like. It's a good color. Some of the chartreuses are more green, some are more yellow, some are somewhere in the middle. This one happened to be the best of the bunch on the wall right now. So I'm going to just kind of separate a bit of that for my tail. I'm just going to trim it away from the hide like so. Pinch it here. I'm going to try and take out some of the under fur just to reduce the tie-in bulk. So I pulled out a little bit of that. Get rid of that. You don't have to spend a lot of time doing it. If these guard hairs bug you, you could take a few of those out that are longer. They're not going to hurt anything though. I usually just leave them in place. Then we're just going to collect the rabbit with the thread, leaving about a 3/4 length or maybe 1 length of the shank, but I'd say about 3/4 length shank tail. I'm going to wrap the butts of that all the way up to our eyes to make a nice smooth abdomen. And I'll work back towards the tail, and we have our tail tied in. Nice and easy. Next up, I'm going to add some crystal flash chenille, like this, crystal pearl chenille, excuse me, in fluorescent chartreuse. We are going to take a bit of the chenille away and expose just the core, and then try and capture it with the thread. Wrap it in place. I'm going to move my thread up to the eyes, half hitch it, use the bobbin cradle, and then I'm actually going to reposition this just a bit, like so. We're going to wrap our body out of the chenille, just covering wraps, budding wraps all the way up to the eyes, like that. And then we'll capture the chenille with the thread, tie it off behind the eyes, get rid of the excess. All right, we're looking good so far. Next up, we're going to add our legs, which are Wapsi silly legs. They come in a strand like that, looking like a package like this. Silly legs barred, fluorescent chartreuse. Hairline makes a very similar leg that would also work. I'm just going to get a single strand of them. I'm going to start with them on my side, capture them with the thread right behind the eye. And the more I pull on the thread, the more that leg flares away from the hook. The less tension I put, the more it lays alongside the hook. I want it to flare a bit. Then I'm going to pull the leg over the top of the eye, over the top of the tying area to the other side of the eye, and capture it with the thread there with the same tension so that they kind of stand out away about the same amount, like so. Now I've got one that's a bit longer than the other. That's going to bother me, so I'm going to give it a trim. Still a bit long. That's looking better. So now they kind of work as like an outrigger on each side of that fly. When it lands, you're now looking at the bottom of the fly. That will help balance it and lay it on the bottom. Okay, legs are in place. Next up, we're going to add a little bit of Peacock Sword over the back to give us a little contrast. So Peacock Sword is different than Peacock Hurl. It looks like this, much shorter than Hurl, a little more full. Lots of colors in the sword. We're just going to grab a handful of these. I don't ever count them. 5, 6, 8, I don't know how many there are. However many that looks good to you. Like that. I'm going to just tie them in right here behind the beads. Just hold them in place and just capture them with the thread right in front of the bead chain eyes. Those need to migrate a little more than my thread did to get them right on top. That looks better. Put some wraps in there with tension to hold them in place. Then carefully get the butts out of the way. And now the last step, which arguably is the toughest but isn't really that tough, we're going to use some hairline ice dub in Chartreuse, and we're going to just cover those eyes, cover our tying area. So ice dubbing, lots of our customers seem to have trouble with. The magic with ice dubbing is to just use tiny amounts at a time. Whatever it looks like we're using on the macro lens, when you're doing it in real life, you probably need to use 1/4 as much as it looks like we're using here. The macro really makes it look like we're adding a ton. If that's my whole pinch that I've been working with so far, I've already got two pinches off of this to add to my dubbing noodle. So I'm just taking small amounts of it, more like that I'm then adding to the thread each time. If you try and add a whole bunch of it at once, it won't stick to the thread very well. I'm going to need more than this, but so that my dubbing noodle doesn't get too long and unruly, I'm going to widen this amount on first. We'll just kind of figure eight it in place. Just working to cover the eyes a little bit. They don't have to be perfect. Just wrapping around however you see fit. You can wrap around the eyes a bit. Oh, slid off of there. Twice now. Let's see if I can tighten that one up. I'm gonna need more anyway. Slide around the eyes, wrap over the top, figure of eight. Anything you can do to just cover up the gaps around the eyes and clean up the eyes a little bit is all I'm trying to do here. So see if I can get around this one without it slipping off. There we go. Tighten that one up just a bit more. Oh, I'm struggling. There we go. Now I'm in a position where I can tighten this up, and I actually don't think I need all that much more. So I'm going to shorten up that dubbing. Go across the top here one more time. Like so. And we've got basically our head covered in the dubbing. Once we've got those eyes covered, we're just going to whip finish with the trusty midge whip finish. Add head cement, trim away the excess. If some of this unruly ice dub bothers you like it does me, I don't know why, because as soon as you start fishing it gets unruly again. You can give it a little bit of a trim. But that is it, the Chartreuse Headstand, the Royal Wolf of carp flies. It's a really easy fly to tie. It's also very effective, easy to see, easy for you to spot when the fish is taking it, when they're moving towards it. Easy to know when it's near the fish because it's so bright. Give that one a try, Chartreuse Headstand.